All right, so let's discuss terminating versus repeating decimals. So what's the difference between terminating decimals and repeating decimals? See if you can think of at least 3 examples of fractions that will terminate, and then give at least 3 examples of fractions that repeat. So terminating decimals are decimals that end. Repeating decimals are decimals that have a pattern and do not end. So for example, fractions like 1/2, 1/5, and 1/4 all terminate as decimals. So 1/2 is 0.5 or 5/10. 1/5 is 0.2 or 2/10. And 1/4 is 0.25 or 25/100. And then at least 3 examples of fractions that repeat. Well, 1/3 would be a 0, a decimal point, and 3's repeating. 2/11 would be a 0, a decimal point, and 1/8, 1/8, 1/8 repeating. And then 2/7 would be 0.285,714, and then it repeats again. So the repeating digits are 285,714. So that's the difference between a decimal that repeats and a decimal that terminates. But how can you tell if the fraction is going to repeat or terminate as a decimal? To investigate that, we have a packet called the Repeating Decimals packet, where you're going to investigate patterns with decimals and fractions. You should use a calculator on the parts of the packet that it tells you to, but follow the directions and predict the decimal before you use your calculator when it asks. Show all of your work. Here's some examples of the packet. So on number 1, it says convert each of the following fractions to its decimal equivalent. You can use a calculator for this part. So if your calculator rounds the last digit, ignore the rounded digit. So here's an example of A, 1/9. So if you do that on your calculator, you get a 0, a decimal point, and 1's repeating. So to show the repeat end, you only put 1 to the right of the decimal, and you put a line over that single 1. So now you should be able to do the rest of that. When you get to number 3, it asks you to convert the following fractions to its decimal equivalent. And again, you're going to use your calculator and write it appropriately like you see here. So 13/99 is 0, a decimal point, and 131313 repeating. Notice when I show the repeat end, which is the 13, I only show 1 copy of it with a line over it. When you get to number 6, this is where you're going to predict. So you should have noticed some patterns up until this point. So now you're going to use your calculator to check your predictions. So first make your prediction, then check it with your calculator. If you want to keep track of whether you get it right or not, that's totally fine. I won't take off points for that. So predict first, then check it with your calculator. That will help you understand, make sure you're understanding the pattern. On number 11, be sure to use the procedure that it outlines for you and show your work. So here's an example. So 32/90, how we figure out what the decimal equivalent is, we're going to use this strategy. We're going to write 32/9 times 1/10, and then we're going to split up the 32/9 into 3 5/9. You'll notice that 3 5/9 is 32/9. So if we split that up, then we can use the pattern that we already developed, where the 3 is not going to repeat, but the 5/9 is a 5 repeating to the right of the decimal. And then the times 1/10 just moves your decimal place 1 to the left. So our answer would be a 0, a decimal point, a 3 in the 10th place, and then a 5 repeating. So notice that the repeat in line is only over the 5, not the 3. So make sure you predict first, show all your work on this part of the packet, and then write your answer. The key is that mixed number part. Okay, on number 12, you should be sure to fill in the whole table so you can answer the questions that follow. Here's an example of the first line done. So 2/3 as a decimal equivalent is a 6 in the 10th spot repeating, you write down that it's a repeating decimal. If you do the prime factorization of the denominator, well, it's already a 3. So it's just 3 or 3 to the first power. There's only one digit that repeats, it's the 6, and there's no non-repeating digits after the decimal. A non-repeating digit after the decimal would be, for example, if you had a 3 in the 10th place that didn't repeat, and then 5s that repeated after that, that would be one digit that's non-repeating to the right of the decimal. All right, be sure you complete the packet answering the questions. Those last questions in the packet are really important and to your understanding as well as to the final exam. Be sure to upload your completed packet.